And we are live now.
And there's nobody here.
No, because there's a delay. So 0%.
Okay, so private chat is just us.
Yes.
No, it's also with, okay, but the comments is for everybody.
The comments are for everybody, but private chat is for us, and also Anne-Sofie can see it.
Okay. Good. Let's see. Has it shown up on my Facebook? I don't think I clicked that I was attending.
We can also make some announcement.
Are we also streaming on Twitch? Or just
Yes.
Facebook? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. We totally need a music here.
Yeah, we need some stock waiting music. But I can't see who's joining. If anybody, let's see.
So we can.
Okay, 2 people are on Facebook. That's probably us.
So whenever that you're ready, we can start the countdown.
What is the time on your clock? Yeah, I think, should we start it and people can drop in during the introduction?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
let's just start the countdown. Hi everyone, and happy International Day of Women and Girls in Science. This is a really good day to have this event. My name is Sherry Liz, and I'm working as Azure Developer Engagement Lead at Microsoft, and I'm also organizer of this meetup together with good friend of mine, Lisa Manley. Hi Lisa, how are you doing today?
Hi guys, and thanks so much for joining. My name is Lisa, and I am an investment manager at Copenhagen capacity. So for anyone watching that's not based in Denmark, but considering getting a job here, you should definitely reach out to me. And I also run WomenTechmakers with Sherry, and we're really happy that you're here. We just want to talk about a few upcoming events before we jump into today. So Sherry, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So today, to celebrate this day at Microsoft, we actually launched an interactive educational game. It's a pretty fun one that you are going to be on mission to save International Space Station, and you need to solve a few puzzles on the way. And to do that, there will be guidance from 5 European scientists there that are going to help you to solve those puzzles. And then you're also going to learn some basics of API management, Python, and web development. It's a pretty cool one, but the fun doesn't stop there. Once you finish the game, you can also gain some of cute Azure Heroes badges. This one is limited edition Space Badger that you can take that one with you and continue the fun in the Minecraft. So I'm going to paste the link in the chat, and I really encourage you, all of you, to go and check it out. Lisa, you also have something to announce as well.
Yes, so if you joined us from Meetup, we mentioned this is our kickoff event. So Women Techmakers normally does in-person events throughout the year. This is our first socially distanced event, but we have another COVID-friendly event that's coming up for International Women's Day on March 8th, the FTW conference, which Sherry will also post the link to in the chat. And that's actually going to be a multi-country, multi-track conference where we're not just covering inspiring tech stories, but we're also doing some education. And we're also having kind of a track about building your career in tech. And then some fun stuff. We're having like an arts and crafts and coding track, so you can learn to knit and code. And we hope to see you there. It's going to be really fun. So that's going to be March 8th, just next month. And that's all for our opening announcements. And again, we'll post all the links and we hope that you'll join us again. But the reason that you're here today is because we are kicking off this series of career talks where we kind of wanted to help to inspire women that are maybe at the beginning stages of their tech careers and how they can kind of reach the top. And the reason that it's important to us is because, as you all know, there is still a gender gap in the tech field. I don't have to, rattle off a bunch of data, but for example, in the recent Atomico report on the state of European tech, 87% of women said they were challenged by gender discrimination at work, compared to 26% of men. When it comes to women in tech and female entrepreneurship, even though a lot of data shows that women generate 45% more revenue than their male peers, they still raise less money and it takes them longer to raise it. And when it comes to diversity in recruitment and retention, we can see that even though at the junior layers, there's more and more women, it's still difficult for women to reach the senior leadership levels of management. So we're really excited to help to share some inspiring stories of people that have reached the top. And today with us, we have Anne-Sofie. She's the CTO of Peakon. If you don't know Peakon, they are pretty much one of Denmark's biggest success stories. They were founded here in 2014 in Copenhagen as a startup. I think they've raised around 70 million. And they were recently acquired by Workday for, is it 700 million? I hope I'm correct on that. So that's huge. Their software is used by more than 1,000 organizations globally. And Anne-Sofie, she heads the engineering and data science teams. So she kind of started from the bottom like all of us. She started as a software engineer and now she is the CTO and she has experience in all sorts of organizations from Nemly to Kofax. So we're excited to talk with her. And before we start, I just want to say you can type any and all your questions into the chat from wherever you're streaming from and we'll make sure that we discuss it. So Fia or Anne-Sofie, welcome. Can you introduce yourself a bit and tell us what you do?
Yeah, so as you said, currently I'm the CTO at Peakon, where I've been for the past year and a bit more. I'm 40 years old, I'm married, I have 3 children. They're aged from 12 to 17 years old. I live outside of Copenhagen, where I was born and raised. And in my spare time, I like to do things like karate and fitness and spend time with my family. So I'm really an engineer at heart, but I have a lot of other things I'm passionate about as well, including people. So it's really great to have a job that allows me to incorporate both those aspects. And yeah, that's one of the things I like about the CTO job.
So can you tell us a little bit about what is your background? How did you first get into this?
Yeah, so depending on how long you want me to go back, right? I have a master's degree in engineering and computer science from the Technical University of Denmark. And that's kind of the foundation, I think, that I stand on from a technical standpoint. But my interest in technology really started a long time before that. I wasn't one of those kids that had been like programming since they were 7 years old and, always tinkering with things. It wasn't really until I was, I think, in 9th grade where I did a school project with a friend. This was back in '95, where most people weren't on the internet and most people didn't use computers very much. And I was lucky that we had a school project where my friend suggested that we would build a website, which was the new shiny thing, and nobody knew how to do that. But if we could do that, and he knew a bit about it, so we started building this website for a school project, and I figured out, hey, that's actually pretty fun. And I think it really attracted me that it was something new and that a lot of people didn't know. And I felt like it wasn't that hard, actually. And websites back then were really, really basic. So they were much simpler than what it is today, just very basic HTML. I'm not sure we even used any JavaScript in that project. It was really basic. And one of the things that was great about the web back then, because it was so basic, you could just go in and see how other people made their website. You could actually just right click and see the source and see what they did. So you could really explore quite a lot on your own and try to learn. And I just, from that project, I just picked that up and started exploring more, this cool web page, like how did they do that? And it wasn't complicated. So you could actually see it and copy it and bring it in and start learning about that. So while I was in high school, I actually started doing websites and for small businesses and organizations that needed one but didn't have one at the time. And I worked as an IT assistant in high school, so teaching other kids to use the computer in the lab. I'm sure there were some guys there that thought it was a little bit odd to have a girl come help them with the computer, but they were quite, good about it. I had also just generally been interested in a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that I was quite excited about was science in general. So one of the associations I spent some time with was the Youth Association of Science, which some of you may know. It still exists. I think it's been there for like 100 years. That takes high school students and introduces them to various topics. You can go to the university a couple of days a month and just hear about something in science. And I think that was a really great outlet for just being curious. And I met a lot of other people there that were also curious about science. And some of those people were studying computer science. And I thought, hey, interesting. This is actually not just something I can tinker with in my spare time. This could eventually become a career. And that was, I think, a big moment for me, just realizing that the thing that was a little bit of a hobby for me could actually be a career. And yeah, I felt it was just an area where there was so much that hadn't been invented yet. And that really intrigued me. So eventually I started at the Technical University in Denmark, studying computer science and engineering. I think we were like 10% girls there. It was like combined math and computer science. So it's quite a male-dominated environment, but I think still an environment where people were inclusive of everyone who was interested in the course. I got some small like student programmer jobs in startups. Again, just going from not knowing very much, but just trying to learn and reading books and doing my best to just learn more about programming. I think that was really interesting times, just to try out different things, try out different programming languages, not being really bound to one thing. I actually had twins while I was studying, so yeah, so there were busy days. I think the first student job I had, they were like, I wonder if she's coming back after those twins, right? Well, I think they actually said that to me afterwards, that they weren't sure I was ever, coming back, because that can be quite an undertaking. But I was almost done with my studies. I needed to still do the master's thesis, and one of my friends that I wanted to do it with, he was actually delayed. He had one more semester to do, and I just took that off and spent with my family. So we ended up actually being able to do the thesis together. I was fortunate that my husband was able to take paternity leave when I started my thesis. I think that's really something that I think has been impactful for me in my career going forward, that I had that support, that I didn't feel like it was just me that had to make things work, but we were a team. So he took some time off so I could just focus on my thesis. I do remember some days where I was like getting up, going to the university, having had like 4 hours of sleep and trying to write something useful. But I mean, you make it work somehow, right? And it also really helped having a friend to write with, so I wasn't just alone in my foggy head, and that was really fun. So I graduated in 2005, and that was really when I would say I properly started my career in IT. So yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you had some really good role models from going back to high school, and then benefited from something that many countries don't have, which is this Danish system that's a little bit more family friendly. But I'm interested in when you talk about your student jobs and your first jobs, how did you decide to work with startup companies, which are maybe less traditional?
Yeah, I think that was a little bit random, to be honest. We had a computer lab, and some companies would post like a piece of paper saying, we need a student programmer. And I just grabbed one of those and like, yeah, I could try that. So I contacted them, and that was, I think, one of the first ways I got a job there. It was a really small company. I think it was in someone's basement, and there were like 2 people working out of that. But they needed someone to help them out with some Java programming, and I had like 1 semester of Java programming, so I thought, yeah, I could try and do something like that. I think I actually spent a lot more time than I put on my timesheets, because I was still in the process of learning, and I felt it was maybe a little bit of an investment in myself to spend the time to learn something, to do a task that was maybe actually too difficult for me at the stage that I was at. It wasn't that important with the money. It was more for me to learn and become a better programmer. But some of the next jobs I had, I actually got through people I work with at the university. So, classmates networking comes in, I think, really early. I had a classmate, for instance, that introduced me to a job and said, I'm a student programmer here, and they need someone, and I think you'd be a great fit. So, making use of the people around you, and also for other people to keep an eye out for, like, do you have a friend or a classmate or a coworker that you could help in some way, I think is really powerful for everybody's career. And I was lucky enough that, the guys considered me a friend. It wasn't like I was in my own niche and they didn't talk to me, because I think that would have definitely made it a lot more difficult to work the networking aspect.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's underrated when it comes to bringing up diversity into the tech scene is how important the network actually is to getting the job over the skill set. Would you say that you agree with that networking is equally, if not more important than the skills that you exit your university with?
It's a little bit difficult because they would also not have recommended me if I didn't have the skills, right? So I don't think you can take those 2 things apart. I think they're probably equally important.
So what is your advice for somebody that's maybe a little bit more introverted and not really sure how to get their start when it comes to making those connections for getting into the next steps in their career?
Yeah, so I definitely think if you go and study somewhere, most people will, make friends with people, and you don't make friends to get a network or get a career, but ultimately those are sometimes the people that help you. Also being vocal about if you're in a position where you're looking to get a job. Some people might not know that you're actually looking, so just being upfront and saying, "Hey guys, I could use a student programmer job. Does anyone know that?" I think there are a lot of companies out there that are trying to build bonds with young people coming out of the universities. We see companies investing quite a lot in various forms of career fairs, etc. So it shouldn't be that hard if you're willing to put up the hand and say, "I want to try this." It also doesn't hurt to contact some companies. I would say there are lots of companies out there that are clearly growing and things are happening. Just try and write to them and see what happens. It doesn't cost you more than an email. So I've definitely known some friends that got jobs that way. So, just exploring all the ways that there are networking groups like the one we're in now can also sometimes be a source of jobs. And again, just saying, "Hey guys, I'm actually looking for something." Someone might know someone that has a job.
So I'm interested that you started off as a student worker, but now you're a CTO. Did you have an idea of where you wanted to go in your career when you graduated, or did that come to you along the way?
Yeah, no, I think when I first graduated, I didn't have a very clear idea. I knew I liked programming and I wanted to go do that more. I've always been a person who's driven by challenges, and I'm quite ambitious with what I do. So I've always known I wanted new and bigger challenges over time, but I think they could have looked in many different ways.
So what is your advice for somebody that is leaving with a similar degree but isn't sure what kind of positions or options are available to them? Where would you say they could look to find something that has good challenges and is a good fit?
Yeah, I think I was quite lucky to find a place where they had a really good engineering culture in my first job. I would definitely look for workplaces that are conscious about the environment they create. And often you can start reading that on the website. You can go to careers fairs and talk to them and ask them what it's like. Most companies will also put actual engineers, for instance, on the careers fair, where you can try to talk to them about, what is it like to be entry level? How do you train people? What kind of team would you work in? I think working as part of a team is really, really important. I've talked to some people, when I've been doing recruiting, for instance, that have been put in very lone positions. And I think that's not an optimal start. You want to make sure that you get out somewhere where you join a team and you can learn by osmosis from some of the more senior people that are sitting around you. So I would definitely look for that. I would probably care less about things like specific technologies that I work with. I think that's much easier to transition and learn new things over time. It's more learning a good way of approaching problems and projects is probably what I would go for.
So one of the issues that we see in the ecosystem is women kind of getting stuck on these junior levels. Are there any green flags that you might see when you're joining a company that would showcase the company as a place where you can actually grow and develop within your role and not kind of be stuck at a middle level without being able to move up?
Yeah, so first of all, companies having a bit more of a career strategy and maybe also a strategy that focuses also on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So making sure that they're not just seeing one form of talent that may look like someone that's not you, but for them to really have a very proactive idea of how you develop people. I've definitely asked about that, even in kind of early interviews. How do you develop people? And if they're like, then that's probably not a good sense, right? And also to remember, the first job you get isn't going to be the last, right? So regardless of whatever job you get, you're going to learn something. And probably when you're a couple of years into your career, you have a better idea of what are you looking to learn next. So I would probably worry more about trying to just get a job and getting more of an idea of what is it like to work full-time in a tech career, for instance. And then from there, build your understanding. I would also, again, emphasize the networking aspect. So as you're doing that, maybe also spend some time going to meetups, meeting other people in different companies and listening to their stories. What's it like to work in your company? Because that will give you an idea of what am I maybe missing as the next thing I should be looking for in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think since as a CTO, you're also managing a lot of employees. So when you're basically now in the position where you're developing employees, what are good habits that your employees can have to move forward in their career?
Yeah, so one of the things that we look at quite a lot is living the values that we want. One thing is that you're performing and you have some technical skills that you're growing over time, but you also grow the way that you work and the way that you interact with other people. And that's something that we emphasize quite a lot. Things like sharing knowledge, especially if you're starting to become the senior person on the team. How are you making sure that other people around you are becoming successful based on what you understand? So career growth is a lot about handling more complexity, and this can be on a managerial level, this can be on a more individual contributor level, technical level, but it's also about making other people shine. And even if you're a specialist, making sure that that knowledge gets into the products and gets into the minds of other people working with you is something that I personally value quite a lot.
Are there any what you consider maybe non-technical skills that you were surprised you had to develop as you grew into a management position?
Yeah, obviously the technical skills, I wouldn't say they become unimportant, but they may play a bit of a smaller role. You still use them for the judgment of suggestions that are coming up or solutions that the team is working on. But it's as much about listening to people and providing a more strategic direction of what we're doing, the why we're doing things. The communication side is also really important, especially as you grow. For instance, typically when you start becoming a manager, you might manage, let's say, 5 people, right? A small team of people, and it's very easy to sit down with them every day and interact with them. Now I manage, I think, like 45 people. I can't sit down with them every day. Some of them are in different locations in the world. We have people in London and in Berlin. So I have to think more deliberately about how I communicate, when I communicate to who, to make sure that the vision that I have for the department is understood by everyone and that we're working in the same direction. And that becomes quite a lot more difficult the bigger the team that you manage. So that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
So it's actually kind of strategic communication skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, how do I put it? So I think a lot of programmers maybe feel that they're in programming because they want to do less communication with people. Is this something?
And that's okay, right?
Is this something that will be a hindrance if you're that type of person, if you want to move into a more senior role?
Not necessarily a more senior role. I think you would still be expected to guide people somewhat. But maybe if you have more junior people on the team, that you would help them with things. I think even the most introverted programmers I know, they still enjoy helping other programmers with, technical tasks that they can't solve. And I think that's quite a different thing from getting up on the stage and talking about things to a wider audience. So I think, yes, that side you would develop somewhat. We also see some people going off and becoming more technical evangelists, where they are actually outspoken about technology and things they're passionate about, the company's products, technologies used, and that's one direction you can go, but that's definitely not the only direction you can go as a technical person.
So we are women tech makers. So I have to ask, are there any particular types of adversity that you see women face much more often in the tech field than men?
I think in general, all industries, we are challenged by the implicit biases that we have and our assumptions of other people and what good looks like. And, the way that we define what is a successful person, women might not always fit into that, and we're all different people. We also face expectations of, do you need to be outspoken? Do you need to always believe in yourself to go somewhere? I mean, a lot of women who, I wouldn't say necessarily doubt themselves, but at least are a bit cautious about trying things that they might fail at. And I think that's a culture I would really love us to grow from an early age, being allowed to fail at things without feeling that we are a failure just because something goes wrong. To create safe environments where everybody feels that they can bring themselves to work, I think is extremely important. Where you don't have to be like someone else, you can actually show up as you at work in many different ways and be part of a team. I think that's really important, the feeling of psychological safety, of being in a team that trusts you, having a manager that trusts you. I think I wouldn't be where I am in my career if I hadn't had managers along the way that had faith in me and said, we think you'd be great for this opportunity. That was the way that I initially got into management, was having a CEO that said, do you want to try and become the head of the department? And yes, I think I had said at some point, I want to go into leadership. I think that could be interesting, but taking that step was definitely a lot easier by having someone who was a person of power look at me and say, I think you'd be great at this. That's a real confidence boost. And even when you go into something that, I didn't know how to be a manager, that was a completely new thing for me. So I didn't have that confidence and experience to stand on. I only had the experience of being a developer. So it is taking a chance. I might have not been good at it, right? And but having the backing of someone that believed in me in a position of power was really important to me.
I mean, it's absolutely critical to have heroes at work. So I think this is something that you can't underestimate how important it is to cultivate those relationships with people above you. I think this is a good point to actually bring in Sherry and start taking some of the audience questions, because I see some stuff has been coming in.
Yes, actually, there is this is actually to the point, because we just got this message from Daniela. It's related to what you're discussing right now, but it is more like that, because you also mentioned that you got this position because it was kind of a manager offered you this one, a higher manager. But what is your advice for the people that they are in a position that they feel like that they want to get promoted, and they have more of a traditional managers that they want to totally promote their mini-me's? So
Yeah.
how would you actually proceed in that situation?
Yeah, I think so. One question is that the case that this person would only promote someone that was a mini-me, or is this a perception that they have created because that's the people that they have promoted? Would they actually be able to recognize talent in a woman? I think being assertive sounds a bit tough, but it might also just be about saying, these are my dreams for the future. I would like to, for instance, become a manager. We don't know in this question what kind of promotion we talk about. Are we talk about a promotion to becoming, say, on a manager track, or is it more of an individual contributor track? But saying, this is my dream, asking for their advice is sometimes a good way, instead of having to be direct and say, I want this thing. That's not the way that everybody likes to communicate. So maybe saying, I have a dream of becoming a manager in a year or two. What are the things you would advise me to do that would get me to that position? And trying to get the person to tell you what it is that they need to see from you. Because then you can look at that list and say, is that even something I want to do? Do they have a good idea of where I should be going? Does this match somewhere that I want to go? But if you don't know what it is that they think is the thing that you need to show, go ask them. And you can just ask for advice. It doesn't have to be I want this thing.
Yeah, that's actually very good thing that to mention, that exactly talk to the manager and see that what are the skills that needs to be sharpened, because I saw that the conversation can be exactly like an advice, not directly like an ask, and that's very good thing that you mentioned it here. So one of the other things that I noticed that you briefly touched about it as well, that as a person that you are you're kind of that you're junior going to a new company, or even doesn't need to be the junior, you are a new person, new employee at a company, and there is always a kind of a challenge for having your orientation, your kind of that those first things, that the things that you need to learn. So we only talk about mostly about that, me as a new person, that what are the things I have to look for it. But what is your advice for the people that they are in power? They are the HR leads, they are the manager, hire manager, and so on. What should they do? Especially in my personal question is that for the people that they are more like a junior, is their first career, they just change the career, they are the first comers to the tech, because we hear a lot that we have pipeline issue for women in tech, but there are more of the people that they come after 1 year or 2 year being, especially as a hardcore developer one, they actually they quit, they change, they become product owner, they become product manager, because they believe that they are not good enough to be there. And that we know that it was mostly because of the atmosphere around them. So if you want to give an advice to the hiring manager, to the person in power, that what atmosphere you need to create to not discourage people to go after.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to understand how the people already working there are experiencing the workplace, and to also ask different groups. How do women feel about working there? How do women of color feel about working there? There might be very, very significant differences to the way the different groups experience the workplace. Now, I'm obviously working at Peakon, and we make a living from measuring these things. But I think even if you don't have tools available, interviewing people can be a great way to start understanding how do these people experience the workplace. Are there simply gaps where they feel that their skills, when they speak up, the things they say are taken into account? What does it feel like to belong to different groups and to be a part of this workplace? Because I'm sure that will give you a clue to why people are moving to different jobs, why people are moving to different employers. You'll probably also want to measure, do you see a drop-off? Are there more women, for instance, quickly leaving the company than men? So again, trying to get as much data, and this can be, numeric data, it can be interviews, trying to understand what's actually going on in the minds of the people that you already have in the workplace, because that's probably going to tell you quite a lot. I think in general, when people focus on diversity, they sometimes over-rotate on the diversity aspect and not enough on the inclusion aspect, and that doesn't really solve the problem. You might be lucky to bring in women, but if you can't get them to stay, you haven't really solved that problem. So that would probably be my advice.
Yeah. That is very true. And The other question for you is that have you noticed that the current situation, the COVID situation that we have right now, that affected the diversity in the companies? Because the statistics shows that actually had some effect in US for the women in tech. The whole situation affect them. So, what is your case, your take there?
Yeah, I've seen the US data. I think in Denmark, we haven't been hit quite as hard. For instance, the smallest children have most of the time been able to still go to kindergarten, etc. We can definitely see from our own employees that people have very different family situations and living situations. So if you're living in a small apartment that you're sharing with someone else and you both have to work from home, that makes it more difficult. Or if you have small children that need to be homeschooled, some groups of employees are just more disadvantaged in that situation. You really need to think about how you can care for them differently depending on their needs. Some people might feel comfortable talking about the challenges they have with their manager, and other people, try and manage their best. I think I personally, in my career, been a person who's tried to manage the best I could and not bother other people with my problems. And that's one of the things I've been trying to learn, to open up more and say, this thing is a problem for me, or this is something that's on my mind, instead of feeling like I would always have to solve this myself. So yeah, it's something I'm still working on.
Yeah, yes, that's true. So I want to remind our viewer that if you have any question, please type in there, because we still have time, and we can answer those. So I want to shift gear a little bit and go through that to another topic, is more about that, the scaling up, because we all know that being in tech, every day that you wake up, there is a new things. You need to keep up with everything, and especially if you are. And I hear it more that when you are in more like a mid-level career that you want to come up, that is becoming very more difficult as well to keep up with all of these new things. And it can be quite confusing. So, what is your advice there? How to keep up with this trend, and then how much actually you believe that you keep up with this trend?
Well, I think you can definitely never keep up with everything that's going on in the tech industry. So I think it's okay to be a bit selective and say, there are some things that I am personally really excited about. I'm going to keep track of that and then just focus on that. I think also as you progress in your career, you typically specialize more and you get really good at one thing. So keeping track of what's going there, I think it's good to still keep an eye out of what's going on. That's sometimes why we go to conferences or something else, just to get a bit broadly inspired. But I think it's really determining the balance between where are things where I just want a broad knowledge, and what are the things where I'm going to go really deep and become a specialist in these areas as you progress. And you might not know that when you first graduate, right? So that's also part of the journey.
Yes, we got actually from Pia. We got, hi Pia. Actually, we have one of the question here that about that. Do you do any courses or training on how manage a team, or was it mostly learning by doing it?
Yeah, so I actually took quite some education. So the first thing I took was a course that was called Management in Practice. When I was quite a new manager, I was in a situation where I didn't have a lot of other managers around me. My own manager was in the US, so there weren't very many people I could learn from on the job, and it felt like it was probably a good idea to get a little bit of theoretical foundation and inspiration from other leaders. So I started that quite quickly, and then some years after, I did kind of a whole diploma in leadership education, because I felt that, again, getting the opportunity to get the theoretical foundation and also to reflect more on what I was doing, I think is probably one of the biggest things you get out of taking some education in the area, because it just takes you out of the immediate day-to-day work and forces you to think about, at a meta level, what am I actually doing? How am I doing it? How can that affect people around me that I'm doing it in this way? So there was a lot of self-reflection involved in taking leadership education. That's really something I can recommend. Some workplaces also have, programs for new managers. I would definitely also recommend that if you're in a place where that is available, to do that. I wasn't at the time that I first became a leader. It was a smaller company, so they didn't have any programs, but a lot of the larger companies have talent programs, leadership programs, etc. And that might be a way in. Also for people who are not leaders, but are talented individuals that the company could potentially see moving in that direction. So I would definitely recommend to explore, does your company have anything? Might they be willing to sponsor you to do anything if you're currently in a leadership position? That's also sometimes an option, but it usually requires that you spend some of your free time on it. So that's obviously another thing to juggle for many people. But yeah, I definitely got a lot out of that. So big recommendation.
Maybe during COVID, it's a good time actually to be doing some extra courses when there's no extracurriculars outside of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's totally true. And the one thing actually I wanted to mention here as well, because I hear it from many people here and there, advancing in career and becoming more of a senior, it always doesn't include you to be a people's manager. You can, there are a lot of, because many people, they say that, oh, but I don't want to manage people. But there are a lot of positions that you will be in a senior leadership team, but you are not managing people. That's also something you can think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really happy to see that many more companies are now taking that to heart and actually creating career paths for people that aren't interested in moving to people management, because it's not everyone's interest and not everyone will be good at that. So if that's the only direction you can push people, they're eventually going to leave because there is nowhere for them to go. So I think that's really positive. Even some CTO roles are actually not managing people. They're more about managing technology. It's one of those roles that can have many different shapes in different companies. So,
yeah. I can see we actually have another question about what skills you found have been useful in pivoting from engineer to manager to CTO, which I guess is adjacent to learning these new management courses and learning how to manage a team.
Yeah. So there are definitely some of the skills I already had from engineering, like problem solving and managing complex projects that have been good to have. But I think also just the people aspects that you pick up as you grow, and you learn things from becoming a parent, you learn things from having friends that go through difficult situations, and just taking all those kind of nuggets of experience and applying them in a new way as you become a manager. You really take yourself as a person into becoming a manager. And I think it's also really important to find your way of becoming a manager, to be your authentic self. I think there's a lot you can apply that you learn from whatever else you're doing in life, when it's about people. So I would definitely pick those things.
We have one more question from Paula, and this is something that personally in my career I saw it a lot. So as a woman doing product management, I find it a bit hard aligning people inside a company on some vision. Devs are okay, but people outside of the tech departments are a lot more reluctant. I don't see them reacting to the same ideas and brought forward by men, and I feel that's a roadblock for my career. Any advice on that?
Yeah, it makes you almost mad to read that question, right? Because you can hear that this is someone who has ideas that they are trying to bring forward and they're not being listened to. I think my best advice would be to maybe find a sponsor or two in the organization, find someone that believes in you, and have them help speak up for you and kind of emphasize, this person actually said something valuable. Let's hear that out. Because they can be the role models for other people to understand that they need to listen to you. So think about who could be an ally for you, and for, I think, all of us to just reflect on, is there someone we should be an ally for in the next meeting where we hear someone's ideas being pushed aside.
I also think it leads to something else that you briefly talked about, which is that one way to move forward in your career is actually to move companies. So are there any signs where you would say, this is a good sign that maybe I should jump ship and start looking for the next place that might support me more?
Yeah, I think it's definitely thinking about, how have I grown in the last year? And if the the answer is not really, then I would definitely say, have a hard conversation with your manager about that and about that feeling. I think most managers are quite willing to try and accommodate good employees that they have that are wanting to grow more. So, give your company a chance to actually do something. I think you'd be surprised of how many companies are actually willing to accommodate what you want. But, it's also just a feeling that you have at some point. If it's like, I'm not growing as a person, I'm not growing as a professional in the role I have, is a move a possibility? Yes, it is. But I think you need to make it for the right reasons, and you need to make sure that you understand what you're looking for, so you don't just end up in the same problem in a new organization. So taking some time out to be deliberate about, what does my career look like? Where do I want to be in 3 years? What are the things I'm missing now? And then really look for that in the next company. Because if you're just running away too quickly, you might not have taken the time to reflect on really what you need to find. Don't just run away from a company, run towards something that you want to do.
Yeah, really, really good advice. And since we're here, maybe I should mention that Peakon is actually hiring. So I don't know if you want to say a few words on that.
In engineering and data science and management. So yeah, please visit our careers website. Thank you for mentioning that, Lisa.
We also have a link here.
Yeah.
Yes, and I want to again mention that from the audience that that you can type your questions and we have time to answer them. But meanwhile, also that we discuss about that resources to learn more about the technical kind of that gaining technical expertise and so on. So, what is your advice for learning the more like the soft skills one? Because to me, you also mentioned that those are the one that they are the most difficult one to sharpen, but it is possible. So, what's your advice on that?
Well, I think the best way you do that is by getting feedback from people around you that you work with. So being very explicit about what are the soft skills that you think are important. Maybe ask people that have gone through the career journey that you're looking for and say, what were the soft skills that were important? And then trying to, first of all, get feedback from your colleagues on how am I actually doing on that? Where are the ways that I could, what are the examples where I could demonstrate it more? And just being more as deliberate as you are on working on some of the technical skills of working on the hard skills, because it's really the small steps that you take on that. Maybe I need to be more concise in the way that I express myself in meetings, something like that I can start working on, and it just, taking small steps to get there.
Yeah, these are really good advices, and I would say that is also normally is more difficult to ask for this type of feedback from the other employees. You literally should go outside of your comfort zone to ask these type of questions.
Yeah, maybe that's the first exercise, getting used to being a bit outside your comfort zone sometimes, because that's really how you grow, right? Taking on new challenges that are a bit much. And those can be technical challenges. Those can be, where you need to use some of the people skills, but just, trying something that seems a little bit difficult is usually a good idea for career progression.
Yeah, that's very true. And also, I would say that the companies should definitely create an environment that it is easier, and they also encourage the employees to ask for these feedbacks without having some sort of a pushback that no, I shouldn't do that, and so on. That's very important in my opinion.
So I can see as we kind of reach the end of our hour, I wanted to ask you, Anne-Sofie, is there anything that we didn't talk to you about that you think is important for our audience to know about their career journeys in tech?
Yeah, first of all, that there are many different ways that you can have a career in tech, right? And you need to explore which one makes you happy. And just, keep experiencing that over the years and reflecting on what are the things I really like about the job I have today. What are the ways that I would like something to be different? And then what are then the jobs that look like that? I would also really recommend that people are proactive in dialogues with their managers. I hear a lot of people saying, we wait for that once a year performance conversation or whatever happens in the company you're in, but actually growth and development should happen all year round. So making sure that you're vocal about your dreams and where you want to go. Managers aren't mind readers. And making sure that you ask people's advice. It could be from a manager, it could be from senior people that you work with, and say, I want to go here. What would you recommend for me to do? Because I think most people are quite willing to help someone out that's on that journey. So ask for help. That's okay. People want you to be successful at your job in 99% of the cases, right?
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And actually, while we're here as a community, I'd also like to open the floor to anyone in the comments if they'd like to post their best career advice that they want to share. I know earlier someone said that, it can be difficult to assert yourself and things like that and asking for raises and promotions. And I can say, I took advantage of resources that my own union offered, where they actually helped me draft the type of emails and wording that helped me practice what I needed to do to ask my manager. And these are things that maybe people don't think of off the bat when they're in the moment. But there's all sorts of resources available to you also here through the Women and Tech Makers network. And we do want to help. And I'm sure, Sherry, you also have loads of advice from Microsoft that you could share.
Yes, that is very true. And also one thing that I want to mention, because I hear it from in many places. We discuss about that when you are in a toxic environment, because that can happen a lot. And that maybe one of the best way is that to just quit, because I had few people that they talked to me that they had mentors and that they helped them to go on their career. But the issue is that there are some situations that I don't say that all the mentors are like that, but there are some situations that the mentors, they want you to grow, but maybe not grow higher than you. And there are situations that those mentors, they might push you back down. And I know it's difficult, but difficult situation, and you might be in a really bad because that happened to my very close friend, that she was very close to totally quitting from tech and everything. But when you are in such a situation, just go out and then reach out to the other networks, because there are a lot of people there that want to help you. Come and reach out to us. Lisa and I, and I'm pretty sure Anne-Sofie also, we are here. You can always find us on internet, on social media. We can talk, and just don't give up. I know it's kind of that it's not always easy to go forward, but we can just do it together, and we can just encourage each other. And there are a lot of people there that they will actually help you with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see there's a really good question from Tack. Did you ever feel intimidated working with mostly men in dev or in tech? And how do you express your ideas without feeling that you're being undermined?
Yeah, so I think particularly just working with men, no, but I think there definitely have been situations where I felt that, I was out a little bit. I remember once a manager was showing someone around and this is our prettiest employee. And I was like, God damn it, that's not, this was maybe 15 years ago, right? But it still just stuck to me that there are sometimes situations where you feel, hey, now I'm not part of the group, right? And most of the time, I fortunately felt that I was part of the group, I was part of the team, and that's why I didn't, think it was a bad thing that there were a lot of men in tech. And yeah, expressing ideas without being undermined, that's difficult. I don't think that's something that one person can solve by being in a certain way. I think it's really about being in an inclusive working environment. Don't think that there's something wrong with you because people undermine your ideas. It's actually the working environment that's the problem. And, the company needs to fix that if that's the case. And if they're not willing to try and do that, maybe that's not the place for you. So I would really recommend for you to just say, it's not me doing something wrong. It's actually the work environment that's wrong here. Insist on that.
Yes, and based on my experience, when you're in such a situation, just speak up. Speak up and tell other people that, okay, this is not okay to make such a comment. It is not okay to do like that, because there are many situations it is not intentional, actually, after all. People I know it's a bad excuse for other people, but people might say this stuff that they in that situation they wouldn't imagine that is wrong. But if you remind them, they will remember to not do it the next time, and it's going to be easier for you as well when you speak up.
I think, and I hope that you can add to this, Anne-Sofie, is that this also underscores the importance of the organizational culture. And sometimes, like Sherry said, it's not a good fit, but sometimes you just have to learn what is the best way to express yourself within that organization, because it can really vary a lot. And it can vary a lot by country. And I know for all of us expats that are here, we also had to learn new cultural codes and how we expressed ourselves. So, when you're feeling intimidated or when you're not sure how to express yourself, try to take a holistic view about, what is this organization like and how can I learn within this particular organizational culture, and before you step back and decide that it's the wrong place.
Yeah, and I think also, again, taking feedback. So if you think that's a problem you've experienced multiple times, ask some of the people that you're maybe most comfortable with in the meeting and say, I felt I was overheard. What do you think that I could have done differently? Maybe they have some good advice. Maybe there was something that you did that you can change, but just be aware that it's not necessarily you doing something wrong, but, always take the feedback you can get, but you might be in a situation where it's just the environment that's wrong as well.
Yeah, really good advice.
Yes. Okay.
So we are coming to the end of our hour. Should we try to end on a more positive note than feeling intimidated by being the only woman in the workplace?
Yeah, we have actually one more question here. And so how do you manage relationship between colleagues and manager? I find it hard, something if I can be my true self, or I should keep some distance. The startup world is different from the corporate organization. What is your best advice on both of them? Thank you. That's a very good one.
That's a really good question. That was also one of the things that I found was maybe the most difficult, moving from being someone's colleague to being their manager. I think it's important that you can still bring yourself to work. It's not like you put on a shirt that fundamentally makes you a different person. I'm still me when I'm at work. What you have to realize is there is a power dynamic that doesn't go away. You're ultimately still maybe in a position where you will be able to make a choice to let someone go, for instance. So there is always going to be that distance. I also noticed that people somehow take what you say more seriously when you're a manager, and I think I definitely had some oopses on that initially in my career, where I didn't realize how seriously people would take something that I said just because I'm the manager. So I think I got a bit more cautious about how I say things and making sure that it's clear, not that you can't misunderstand it. It doesn't mean you can't joke with people and you can't have fun and you can't have lunch with them and everything. It's just you have to be aware that you represent the company as a manager and people will interpret things you say. So be a bit more clear in the communication and don't do things or say things that could be misunderstood. And always realize that the power dynamic does make it more difficult for the person at the employee end. They might somehow be afraid of you, and I'm saying that quote unquote because it's not that you're trying to be a dictator. It's just there is always a little bit of that power dynamic in the relationship with people, and you just have to accept that that's there. You might not be able to be their very best friend in the world. Hopefully you can have other very best friends in the world somewhere else and still have work relationships that are good and that are giving and where you're know each other's pets' first names and things like that. But the power dynamic doesn't go away.
Yeah, really good insights. I can see. Can you post Daniela's question, Sherry, about companies that this is not just in tech. I think this is in many fields where HR is trying to promote women due to lack of diversity, but there's a fear of being tokenized and being taken less seriously, and people thinking that you were only promoted because you were a woman. Any thoughts about navigating this trend?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that's really back to not over-rotating on the diversity aspect, but making sure that the inclusion aspect is equally important. And I think if you were in the position where you were offered a role and you're thinking, am I just the token person of color or woman or whatever, I would definitely challenge them and say, how many other women are there? What is their experience? Can I talk to someone? If you kind of feel like that's the situation in the company, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes being made by companies today, because they are aware that diversity and inclusion is an agenda and they can't keep not focusing on that. But just, let's get a woman in the board and everything will be fine, right? That's not helpful. You also want to be inclusive of their perspectives, and you want to drive the change that makes workplaces work for everybody. And if you're not doing that, and if you're, interviewing with a company that feels like it doesn't have that piece of the puzzle, I would run away.
Yeah, that's very true. So I wonder that I guess we don't have any question from the audience. So if you want to end this kind of this day by having a kind of a one piece of advice for everybody out there, that
No pressure.
it's probably very difficult, but kind of that to kind of that to make sure that everybody they are. I mean, a piece of advice for advancing in career. So what that would be?
I think it would be to allow yourself to dream and not give up when things are difficult. I think, during the course of a career, we're all going to be working until quite, late in our ages. There will be many opportunities, and you will learn more about what makes a good company for you, what makes a right role for you. So don't be afraid to try something. You will get meaningful experiences from that, and you'll learn more that will ultimately probably bring you closer to the dreams that you have. So don't be afraid to try something out. And if it doesn't work, there's probably a next job at some point where you know a bit more about what it is that you're really looking for. So, get out there, get some experience.
And maybe consider joining Peakon,
Yeah, that is definitely a place with a great working environment. So I would advise you to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and for your insightful questions. And we hope that you will join us at the FTW conference for International Women's Day on March 8th, as we posted above. And I believe Sherry from Peakon also posted some of the links if you're interested in potentially getting a position there as well and learning more. And I think I can speak for everyone on this call that if you have any additional questions or you're looking for mentorship, don't hesitate to reach out to our networks, and we'll see how we can help to boost you in your career. Any closing words?
No, just thanks everybody for being with us, and hope to see you all soon. And thanks, Anne-Sofie, for a great conversation, very insightful, and hope to see you all soon. Bye-bye.